The Fringe Podcast Summer Rewatch, Episode 13.
Hi, this is Michael Cerverus. I am the observer on Fox's Fringe, and I'll be watching you while you're listening to the Fringe Podcast.
Web hosting for the Fringe Podcast is provided by HostGator. Easy WordPress installation, unlimited domains, unlimited disk space, unlimited bandwidth, and a 99.9% uptime guarantee. On sale now for $6.36 a month. Visit thefringepodcast.com/hosting and start serving up your website from the best hosting company in any universe. Welcome back to the Fringe Podcast Summer Rewatch, as we just continue our rewatch of all things Fringe. Today we're wrapping up Season 3, and, you know, it seems like I say this every week. I probably do, but it seems like we're just blazing through this thing, and the summer is going by so quickly. We are now just a few weeks away from Fringe Season 5. I say a few. I mean, we all wish it were here this coming week, although it does signal the beginning of the end. But we're still, I think, about 6 weeks away from its debut, so we do have a little bit of time left. But anyway, tonight we're talking about, like I said, the last few episodes of Season 3 of Fringe. Specifically, we're talking about Stowaway, Bloodline. I always mispronounce this. This is why Clint pronounces it, but it's lysergic acid diethylamide or something like that. LSD is what I call it. 6:03 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Last Sam Weiss, and The Day We Died, the Season 3 finale. And tonight I am joined by Erin and Brandon, who have both been on the show before this summer, and Kathleen, who is joining us for the first time. Hello to the three of you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Daryl.
This is going to be interesting. During the pre-show, we've just been chatting here with the folks that are here in the live chat room, and Brandon has been doing observer voice for about the last 15 minutes or so, and doing a very good job at it. So we'll see how long that lasts. So are you going to try to make it the whole show, Brandon?
We shall see.
Okay. All right. Well, Kathleen, it's nice to have you with us tonight. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi. Okay. Well, first of all, I go by Alternacat in the chat, and I live just outside of Chicago. I've been watching Fringe since the pilot. Huge X-Files fan, so Fringe immediately looked intriguing to me, and I really was hooked on the very first episode. In fact, I think I remember the moment. I think it was when Peter says, "So you're telling me that my father was Dr. Frankenstein?"
Uh-huh.
And that was just like, yes, I'm going to love this show. So absolutely love it. Also, I was a big Lost fan too. Mm-hmm. So, and I've been listening to the podcast for probably since kind of late in season 2.
Okay.
So
I knew you've been around for a while. I wasn't sure exactly when you joined.
Yeah, it's great. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you, and it's always fun to talk to people that have been in the community for a long time, such as yourself, or, you know, Michelle, when we had her on near the beginning of the season, you know, she said, I've only been in your community for a few weeks, but it doesn't matter. I mean, it's always fun to actually chat with folks. Even though we're not face-to-face, it's still, you know, better than a chat room or kind of getting to know each other a little bit. And so anyway, to all three of you guys, thank you for joining me tonight, and I hope to have some really good discussion with you guys tonight as we're talking about the last 6 episodes of Season 3. 6 episodes in one night is a lot to cover, so we're just going to get right to it. I'm going to play that food for thought music, and we'll get started. See, I started the music at the beginning of the episode and didn't reset it. Let's try this.
Root beer float. Butterscotch pudding. Mr. Papaya. Fruit cocktail. Coffee yogurt.
All right, so we're going to get things started tonight with the first episode here, which is Stowaway, and the synopsis from fringepedia.net says, the team investigates a woman who was believed to have died, but appears at a suicide scene and is connected to each dead person. William Bell looks to locate a suitable host for his soul before any negative impact on Olivia occurs. This was written by Danielle Dispatro, Akiva Goldsman, Joel Wyman, and Jeff Pinkner, and Danielle wrote the teleplay, incidentally. Directed by Charles Beeson. And I tell you what, Brandon, why don't you get things kicked off tonight?
Starting off with the food, of course we have to mention the tea. It was mentioned that back at the end of Season 1, William Bell slipped tea filled with soul magnets and gave it to Olivia. This paid off at the end of the previous episode. Also, at the end of the episode, William Bell / Olivia makes a pot of tea, and I scream at the screen in anguish. We also see Walter eating Twizzlers when Lincoln Lee comes to the lab. Speaking of which, this is also the first appearance of Lincoln Lee in the Blueverse, or, as he is affectionately known, Tyrone. This episode also showcases the incredible acting talents of Anna Torv in her 5th different role during this season.
Nice point, yes.
I also enjoyed the title of the episode due to its double meaning. Mm-hmm. Dana Gray is attempting to stow away on someone's soul on its way to heaven, and William Bell is a stowaway in Olivia's body. It also had an incredibly enjoyable quote. Lee said, "Sorry, I shall back up. I am looking at this in the wrong chronological order." But Olivia comments, "Stranger things have happened," to which Lincoln Lee replies, no, they haven't. There is also a good quote later in the episode in which Peter says, "Welcome to the Fringe Division. Every answer you get just leads to more questions," a theme which we have had several times throughout the series and also describes the series as a whole. We also see that no mode of public transportation is safe, as there is a bomb on a train. I will reserve the rest of my comments in case other people have covered them.
Very good. Thank you. I can't believe you did that for the whole thing. This is going to be interesting for sure. All right, Kathleen, how about you?
Oh my goodness. It's hard to follow that up, actually.
It is.
Okay, well, the first thing I love about this episode is how Peter is just brimming with anger. He's just really upset at the situation. Yeah. I mean, who can blame him? Some old guy with questionable morality has basically hijacked his new girlfriend, his new girlfriend's body, right when he was just starting to get to know her really well, you know? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he's going to be a little upset about that. And so I love those interactions, especially just Josh Jackson's reactions to Bellivia are great. I have to say, I know this was a little controversial, but I think Anna Torv did such a great job in these episodes where she played Bellivia. Mm-hmm. I mean, it wasn't just the voice. I think the voice really helped really see her as Belle, but it was more than just that. She changed her posture. She changed her mannerisms. Yep. I mean, it was really believable. In fact, there's a scene when Peter says, "Don't listen to him." I mean, her, right? Where I was totally on board. I was like, I would have said him. I really believed it was Belle. So that was great. Yeah. And yes, as our observer friend just pointed out, this is the first time we see Blueverse Lincoln Lee, or I like to call him Nerdy Lincoln. Yes. He's a favorite of mine, so that was a lot of fun. And seeing his reactions to the strangeness that is the Fringe Division is a lot of fun. after this long, we kind of take some of this weirdness for granted. So kind of getting to see it with fresh eyes is it's a lot of fun. I love the phrase "compassionate soul vampire."
Yes.
I mean, even though she didn't actually end up being, just that they came up with that phrase was really funny.
Yeah, I agree.
So.
That was good.
Yeah, so that's all I had.
Okay. All right, good. Erin?
In this episode, like, I really liked the ongoing discussion throughout the episode of like fate versus destiny, and Peter not believing in fate, whereas William Bell does. And it was just interesting to see him, and Walter and all the experiments they've done throughout their lives, all, the trouble they've caused, mistakes they've made, to still believe in that higher power where Peter doesn't. And also to see it in, the character of Dana Gray, and believing in if it's her fate or her destiny to stay alive, and what is her purpose for still being on there. So I liked the parallels between that. As Kathleen was saying, just the interactions between the characters are so interesting in this episode because, it was Olivia, not Olivia. You just see, like they were saying in the chats, like, Walter called Astrid, and Walter, who's like the biggest Peter Olivia shipper on the planet, just had no regard for Peter's feelings whatsoever. He was just so excited by the return of Belle that everything else just kind of went out the window. So it was fun to see those interactions. It was great to see Olivia and Astrid, and just how he was hitting on her, and just all the little, things that Astrid did. Like, I thought that was really great. And then just one of the lines that Dana Gray said, she said, we can feel that way, that we don't have a purpose, but we do. And I think that kind of plays a lot into Peter's journey throughout the series, where before Olivia found him, he didn't have much of a purpose. And then he joined Fringe Division and he found his purpose. And then in a few episodes, when the machine gets turned on without him, he kind of temporarily loses that because he thought that that's what he was meant to do, and so trying to figure that out and then ultimately fulfilling it in the end. So it's, seeing that journey happen. And then there was one other thing on this, like when she went to the church and Dana Gray was talking to the nun about the ascension of Azrael. Is that how you say it? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think so.
I was very intrigued by that story. So after watching the episode, I did a little searching on the internet. So, what I ended up coming up with, who knows, if it's accurate or not. But I found a few interesting things that I thought played into, where the series goes. But Azrael is referred to as the angel of transition, or the angel of death, and his name means whom God helps. And the story goes, when he was brought to heaven, the seraphim consul assigned him the word of death to carry out his duties. And in his research, he learned how to track human souls after death. He confirmed that reincarnation and disbandment both occurred, and he also discovered that many souls were anchoring themselves to the corporal plane as ghosts, or to the ethereal plane as dream shades, and some were drawn into the domains of ethereal spirits. It was also said that he will be the last to die, and that his job is to record and erase in a large book all the names of humans at birth and at death. And so I thought that was an interesting parallel to William Bell in the end of season 4, where he is essentially collapsing the two universes and will be the last man on Earth to be alive. So I thought that the parallels between that were kind of interesting.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
in a way, it also reminded me a little bit of the episode in season 4, Making Angels, where he was saving his victims from the rest of, saving them from death, essentially, sending them on earlier than they were supposed to. So that, there's a little bit of a parallel there as well.
Yeah.
But so yeah, that was what I got from that.
Oh, good stuff. Thank you for that. You remind me of the jerk. He says, "I have a special purpose," but except he didn't have a special purpose. But anytime we can work in a quote from the jerk, it's a successful episode. I'm with you, Kathleen. I thought Anna's job, I was going to say impersonating Belle, which is Leonard Nimoy. Maybe that is fair. I don't know, but the mannerisms that she had, she would raise the eyebrow, the way she would kind of stick her hand in her lab coat pocket, and just some weird things. You mentioned the posture. So I'm with you. I thought that Anna did a great job as Olivia, although I was glad to see Olivia gone and move on beyond that. I was one that was a fan of it and thought she did a great job with it. Another thing I'll say is the intro on this, as far as when Dana gets to the rooftop and is talking with that guy and then holds on to him as they jump off, and you get that great shot as they approach the car and smash into it. For me, that's one of the better intros of Fringe, and Fringe has a lot of really good intros. So I'd put that one. It's at 86, 87 episodes right now. So I would put it in my top 10 probably. So that's pretty good, I think. So for me, I really liked that. And the other thing I want to point out is this quote that I thought was just really, really good. And it goes into with that fate versus destiny or free will, I guess, that you guys were talking about. But this is when Olivia is talking to Peter, and Belle says, "Son, it's not always that simple. I've lived a long time, Peter, so believe me when I tell you that sometimes when one walks away from his fate, it leads one directly into fate's doorstep." And I know at the time when we did this podcast originally, we looked at that quote and said, I bet that quote really has more significance, and Peter is going to run from the machine, but he's ultimately going to be drawn to the machine or going to end up there anyway. But in reality, now that we know what we do about who the first people were, or how the machine came into existence, and what motivated them to build the machine and all that stuff, it has a whole lot more significance now than even we thought it did back then. So I thought it was worth going over that quote again. So one of the really great quotes from this episode for me. All right. Anything else from you guys on this episode?
Linda is lost in the chat room just pointed out a really interesting literary reference that I didn't catch. And that is that Dana Gray is very close to the name Dorian Gray, which I believe there's a book called A Picture of Dorian Gray. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but I believe the basic idea is that this man Dorian Gray has a painting of himself, and the painting will age while he stays young, and he essentially will never die. Yes, by Oscar Wilde. Thank you, Brandon. So anyway, I thought that was very, very interesting kind of literary reference there.
Yeah, I like that. Very cool. Thank you, Linda, for that. I wasn't aware of that. All right. Anything else?
I have several points as to how this relates to some other episodes.
Okay.
It is said that Dana is struck by lightning twice and survives. Coincidentally or not, several episodes later, Walter also gets struck by lightning twice, which triggers a revelation.
Uh-huh.
Also, in this episode, Dana is considering sacrificing the lives of the people on the train in order to ascend to heaven, which is reminiscent of the episode White Tulip, where people on a train are continually sacrificed in order so that a scientist can travel back in time to die. Also, when Lincoln comments that his brief stint with Fringe Division was a lot more interesting than his current job, Peter tells him to be careful what he wishes for, which is potentially foreshadowing for when he joins the team in Season 4. That is all.
Okay. You never know. All right. Good stuff. Thanks for that, Brandon. All right. So the glyphs in this episode spelled erode, and I could not find the episode clue for the next episode, which is Bloodline. This synopsis is Olivia is abducted by a medical team keen on accelerating her pregnancy. The Fringe Division searches the city for her before a medical condition kills her. Secretary Bishop has secret plans for the grandson he expects. This was written by Monica Owusu-Breen and Allison Shapker, and directed by Dennis Smith. All right, Kathleen, you're up first.
Oh boy. Okay. I actually didn't really like this episode.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have a couple of reasons. The first is I don't really by this time in the story, I don't really like Olivia.
Okay.
And yet this episode, I guess I'm kind of supposed to, feel sorry for her, feel happy for her, whatever.
Yeah.
But, up until this point, she hadn't done anything to redeem herself. And she had just been following orders, following Walternet's orders. And I know later, she actually does end up redeeming herself. But at this point, I remember watching this episode originally and thinking, why do I need to care about this woman? She's the bad guy, right? So that was a little upsetting. Plus, the second thing was that the pregnancy storyline, I really think it's way overused, and frankly, a little desperate plot device that television writers use.
Sure.
I don't know why every show seems to go there eventually, but it seemed so trite and expected. Although I have to admit, actually, I need to issue a formal apology to you, Daryl, because I still feel partially responsible for you losing that initial banana bet. I don't know if you remember, but
I do. Yeah.
You read my email with this long, elaborate reason why there was no way Olivia was going to be pregnant.
Yeah.
Right before you ate a bunch of bananas.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't blame you for that.
Well, thank you. I say only partially because I mostly blame the writers. So I was disappointed in this episode. And then, it just felt very forced. And then at the end, it's like, oh, she's going to die. And then, of course, we have to have a deathbed confession of love. But, we really don't want her to die. So, guess what? Surprise, she's not really dead. It just, the whole thing just didn't work for me.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that's all I had.
All right. Erin?
Okay, well, every single note that I made was pretty much the exact opposite of what Kathleen just said. So I apologize for disagreeing with you.
No.
I absolutely 100% agree that the pregnancy theme is way overused on television, but Fringe always just kind of has a way of doing it differently, and I think that they succeeded with this episode. Mostly because it referenced back to the first season with the rapid pregnancy that we saw in the same old story. Right. And that kind of made me think, well, we saw it successful in the Redverse. Obviously, it didn't go so well in the Blueverse, and just to see, these things that Walter and Belle used to work on back when they were together and how now that they're separated, Belle is over in the Redverse and the studies continued and you can see that they've been successful, whereas in the Blueverse, Walter went away to the mental institution. ZFT got a hold of whatever it is they got a hold of and they tried to duplicate, the study, and obviously it wasn't as successful. So just to see the differences there where one universe was able to succeed and the other one wasn't, I thought that was kind of cool. The other thing is I too did not like Olivia until I saw this episode, and I think for me it was because out of all of the episodes, this is kind of where we see Olivia and Olivia most alike. Olivia's in this, stressful situation. She's in a life or death situation, and just her mannerisms, the way that she speaks, the way that she interacted with people, like it reminded me so much of Olivia. And it made me feel bad for Olivia because that's how she lives her life all the time. And obviously Olivia is different, but just to see that, at the core that these two women are very much alike, I kind of like that aspect of it as well. And then I thought I actually went back and watched the same old story after watching this just to see how many parallels there were. And, in that episode, there's a dream sequence where Olivia experiences the rapid pregnancy. So I thought that was, a very cool foreshadowing to what happened in this episode. Mm-hmm. And then after the dream sequence, the the guy that they're after, Christopher, he enters a bar that's called Henry's, and I thought that was kind of funny too. I'm like, oh, okay, you know, so that was kind of cool too. So that's why I did like this episode. Other things that I liked about the episode is obviously Henry coming back was fantastic. I also liked that Lincoln and Charlie were finally clued into what, you know, Olivia had been up to when she went into the Blueverse. Like, I was happy that they were able to find that out, that they weren't left in the dark. And, you know, this is also where we kind of start to see the dissension in the ranks. Like, Lincoln and Charlie are putting the pieces together, and they're starting to figure out that maybe the secretary is, you know, his plan isn't really the best option for them. So I kind of like that those seeds have started to be planted here.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much all I had on this one.
Excellent. All right. Brandon?
I also found this episode to be rather unenjoyable. I would go so far as to list this as my second least favorite episode of the series.
Wow.
Trailing ahead of only A Short Story About Love.
Oh, okay.
Really?
One of my major problems with this episode was that there were way too many references to previous episodes in the series. A few was okay, but honestly, this was just bad form. We have already discussed in detail about how the accelerated pregnancy was a callback to episode 102, The Same Old Story. If you pay close attention, you will also notice that this is yet another episode in the series where Olivia is captured, an event which has happened too many times to count.
Sure.
She is also captured in Chinatown, or at very least near Chinatown, which is reminiscent of Peter being captured in the episode Snakehead.
Right.
We also have yet another episode where someone is being tracked by a tracking device, which is then found placed somewhere else as it has been removed, such as Walter in the episode Gray Matters.
Right.
People who have captured Olivia are also running tests on her, such as the episode Bound, when she was given a spinal tap to see if she had cortexiphan in her system. There were possibly more, but at that point I decided my efforts were better placed elsewhere. I had mentioned in a past episode how I watch these episodes faster than normal in order to fit them all in. This episode I watched even faster than the others because I wanted to get it over with. There was also one major issue that I have with the entire Baby Henry plotline. In Season 4, September states that the child was born to the wrong Olivia Dunham due to a series of circumstances that should never have happened. However, if it wasn't for September's interference, would Peter not have stayed in the Redverse exclusively and therefore fallen in love with Olivia by default? You may discuss.
Well, that's something that we've speculated on for a while and have asked that same question. And I don't know. I mean, are we then led to believe that something else would have caused Peter to meet Olivia and have a child? I don't know. I don't know. You're the observer, Brandon. You tell us.
It is not within my place to interfere and give you the answers that you seek.
Oh, observer cop-out.
Yeah, that's right. Erin, Kathleen, do you guys have any ideas?
I'm just as stumped as you guys are. I have no idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
Okay. Sorry, Brandon, we can't help you.
It is all right. It is also worth noting that in this episode, in terms of food, Charlie stated that he started out his date with Mona, aka Bug Girl, by having tea.
With soul magnets.
All right. Anything else?
No.
Oh man, I'm laughing so hard. Okay. Excuse me. Good stuff, Brandon. Thank you for that. I don't even know where to begin. Okay, I'll start here. So Brandon and Erin liked the episode. No. Brandon and Kathleen did not like the episode. Erin liked the episode. I'm going to bring balance to the episode then. I liked the episode. But I do agree that up to this point, I didn't like Olivia. There was nothing really redeemable enough for me to make her a likable character. This episode and you know, the birth scene between her and Lincoln was just one of my great all-time scenes, I think, in Fringe. Probably, I don't know how many scenes there have been. I mean, it's so good. You know, Lincoln, particularly in the episode, he does most of he delivers most of the lines, I guess, that in that scene. But you know, Olivia does a good job too. So that scene really makes this a good episode for me. The repeating of some of the other themes that we had seen before, that didn't really bother me that much. The tracker, I guess, of those that Brandon pointed out, maybe it bothered me the most, but that didn't really bother me that much. But you know, I can totally see the point of view that you guys shared, but it's just not one that I had. Here's the other thing I'll say. You know, we had Charlie and Lincoln at the end of the episode becoming suspicious of Walternet's motives, and they never really did anything with that. You know, Charlie wasn't on season 4 at all, and so that might be why. And then, you know, spoiler alert: the Redverse is gone by the end of season 4, so Charlie's dead in the Blueverse. So I don't think we're ever going to get back to that. So kind of disappointed with that storyline never went anywhere. It seemed like it would have been really good to have their top 3 agents, including Olivia, at odds against Walternet. But when Peter went and reset the timeline, none of that mattered anymore. So I was kind of disappointed in that. That's all I have. You guys have anything else?
I actually noticed 2 fun Easter eggs. One was Opus the peahen.
Yes.
Instead of Opus the penguin. So that was fun. And then West Wing, still, there was a sign for that.
That's right. Was it 12 seasons, I think it was on?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, you cut out just there for a second, so you might have said that. But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Opus, the peahen thing, because that's another one of those examples. We talked about the B-52s a few weeks ago wrote a song exclusively for an episode of Fringe, and this is another example where a creative piece has been created, you know, exclusively for Fringe, and of course the DC comic books are another example of that. So, yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Mm-hmm. All right, anything else?
I believe it is worth noting that I actually enjoyed the Olivia character.
Oh, really? Okay. But you didn't like the episode?
No. I believe that may contribute to the fact that my enjoyment of her character stemmed to how much she seemed to enjoy being in the universe and tackling these Fringe events, whereas in this episode, she did not seem to be having a good time at all.
Okay. So you found pleasure in her displeasure?
No, I found displeasure in her displeasure, as I did not enjoy this episode.
I got you. Okay. All right. All right. Well, the glyphs in this episode spelled fated. And yeah, I'm on the right one. Fated. And the clue for the next episode, when Olivia, or excuse me, Olivia was escaped and she's going down Chinatown, there's a sign right there. And it has a little red animated bird, not animated, but a picture of a red bird. And that red bird would be animated in the next episode, Lysergic Acid Diethylamide, LSD. And the synopsis for LSD is the science team frantically attempts to extract Belle's consciousness from Olivia's body before her soul is lost forever. That, of course, is because he's in there via soul magnets! Written by Akiva Goldsman, Jeff Pinkner, J.H. Wyman, and directed by Joe Chappelle. Erin, you're up to bat.
All right. Well, I had completely forgotten how hysterical this episode was at so many points. I was laughing out loud so many times. I'm like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about all this stuff. So that, you know, Peter when he's on LSD, Broyles on LSD, it was just absolutely hysterical. Like, just seeing Lance Reddick smile was ridiculous. Like, like this guy never smiles. So that was awesome. I really liked that little interaction between Broyles and Astrid too, because it's like Broyles is part of this team. He leads the team, but you really, you know, outside of his one episode that we have, you really don't get to see, you know, how all of this stuff affects him personally. And it took some drugs for us to see it, I guess. But I really liked that we got that little tidbit out of him, you know, how he feels about the whole situation. So that was good. I think one of my favorite scenes was between Walter and Belle, and it was just nice to see them have that conversation. And outside of Nina, Belle really is the only person who knows how Walter was before, you know, the type of man that he was before. We only get to see who he is now. So for Belle to, you know, tell him that he has changed and that he still has the ability, you know, to do what he needs to do to stop Alternate from what he's doing, I thought that was really great. And obviously we'll see that come into play in the next couple episodes. That was a great setup for that. Rewatching it again, I noticed that when Peter goes up to Mr. X, Mr. X says, "It's nice to meet you." And, you know, now knowing that Belle was Mr. X, I thought that was interesting because I guess, I mean, I was wondering why he would say that. Like, is this, what version of Belle is this? And whether or not he's met Peter, like, in Olivia's mind, I guess I just had questions on that. You know, why would he say it's nice to meet you? Like, I didn't quite understand that. I don't know if anyone knows, but is it just because that version of Belle in Olivia's mind never met Peter? Like, is it the version from her childhood? So he never got to meet Peter? I'm not sure. But I also liked how this episode kind of gave us insight into Peter and Olivia's relationship. Like, Fringe is really good at telling you things without telling you them, because we don't get a whole lot of on-screen interaction between them. But for him, you know, to show that he knows her so well and that, you know, they do have this, you know, relationship that we don't really get to see, you know, for him to have the ability to find her and save her. Like, I really liked that we got that unique view of that relationship without really getting it. So yeah, that was cool. And then I liked at the end, right before Olivia woke up, when it started thundering and lightning, you know, and Belle goes, "That's alternate," right on time. And that kind of goes back to, you know, where Belle was saying that a storm is coming. So I kind of liked how that came into play there. And then I thought when Olivia woke up, it was a lot like Dorothy waking up from Oz, where you had Astrid and Walter and Peter all like crowded around her, and she was just, you know, waking up. So I thought that was, in a way, an Oz reference without really referencing it. So that's about all I had on that.
Good stuff. Yeah, thank you for that. All right, Brandon?
Did anybody else watch the commentary for this episode?
I did not.
No.
I tried to, but my Blu-ray player is messing up right now, and I couldn't get to that.
I am sorry to hear that. It was rather enjoyable. They pointed out many of the visual Easter eggs that the animators placed in, such as Walter falling into a frozen representation of Raiden Lake.
Oh.
The zombies on the roof were all the scientist Brandon,
yes,
and the actor had fun doing all of the voices. And the fact that episode 19 was not always supposed to be weird in every season. In fact, the animation was actually supposed to originally be in episode 316.
Oh, 316, okay.
Some other things which tie into other episodes. Olivia lives in a house with a red door, and all of the other doors seem to be green. Mm-hmm. Of course, tying into green, 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 red. William Bell's final message, "I knew the dog would not hunt," is an interesting contrast to season 4. In this episode, he willingly sacrifices himself so that Olivia will live, whereas in the season 4 finale, he is attempting to sacrifice Olivia so that his vision of a future can live.
Very true.
This illustrates how much the lack of Peter has changed William Bell's character. I was reminded a lot of the movie Inception by several of the things in this movie.
Yep.
Such as they go into Olivia's subconscious, and once they start actively participating, the people or projections, also interesting, the commentary points out that there are only 150 people in Olivia's mind, and after a while they just start to repeat.
Okay.
Turn themselves against Belle, Walter, and Peter. And in terms of food in this episode, we have LSD-coated sugar cubes, Broyles examining the spiral on a piece of licorice, and Olivia having toast and approximately 2 pounds of butter. If you look next to the toaster, you will see an extremely large piece of butter, the size of half a loaf of bread, sitting on a plate.
And what about the chocolate pudding that Walter got out of the trash can?
True. I did not count that because not very much of it was consumed, and it was instead used to send a message.
This is true. I just thought you should be thorough.
Thank you. However, I prefer not to steal everybody's points.
Okay. Anything else?
Not now. I will perhaps chime in later before we move on.
All right. Okay, Kathleen, you're up.
Okay. Well, first of all, one of I think my favorite moments ever is when Astrid calls Walter Wally.
Yes.
That was priceless. And Walter's reaction, just that look of indignation, like, how dare you get my name wrong? That was great. So this is definitely one of my favorite episodes. Originally I did not know, when I saw this episode, I didn't know that the zombies on the roof were Brandon. until I heard the podcast, and someone pointed that out. And then I was watching it again, and I thought, now why in Olivia's mind would Brandon be a zombie? And then I was thinking about it. I thought, Brandon was actually trying to take her brain.
That's right.
And zombies love brains, so that must be why Brandon was a zombie in her subconscious. And by the way, while I was actually watching this episode, I thought, I wonder if they got the actor who plays Brandon to do the zombie voices. And then I thought, no, that would just be silly. They could just get anybody to do the zombie voices. So thanks for pointing that out, Brandon.
You are welcome.
Let's see. Oh, the one thing that I really wanted to point out about this episode is no one really talks much about Josh Jackson's acting, but I thought it was really stand out in this episode. I mean, he had such a range of emotions, of course, when he wasn't animated, obviously, but from the beginning, just that look of disgust when he at Bolivia, he's like, you need to get out of my girlfriend now, to that great, like, startled wake up reaction, like from a nightmare when
so good.
Yeah, that was there was jarring, and it's like, yes, I know how that feels when you wake up from a nightmare. And then just the look of pure joy and relief when Olivia finally wakes up. I think he did a really great job with that kind of very wide range of emotions in this episode. So, and he can really kick some zombie butt, although that was the animated version of him. So, that's pretty much what I had in that episode. Great episode.
Yeah, it's such a fun episode. I think it sounds like we all agree on that. A couple things that caught my eye when Olivia's consciousness emerged near the beginning of the episode, the lights blew out. And it just reminded me of in season 4 when she's taken captive and, we have faux Nina in there with her and she starts blowing out all the lights. And I don't know if that was because, she was putting so much effort in trying to emerge at that point that it was similar to the effort that she's putting forward in season 4, or if it was just not related at all. But it just struck me as interesting that the lights blew out when Olivia emerged. Go back to and I've pointed this line out in several episodes now as we've talked about Walter's self-doubt, but we finally get to the episode where he and Belle have that conversation, and Belle says, when we were kids, we needed each other to balance each other out. But now you have the wisdom of humility. You don't need me anymore. You can do this on your own. And that's a really good line, and really helped Walter, I think, get through this that he's been struggling with, it seems like all season. I'm not sure how many episodes now. And also, Belle imparted some wisdom onto Olivia there as she left, or right before he left, rather. And he says that her fears and her doubt are her worst enemy, and that there's never been anyone like her, and she can do it. She just needs to believe in herself. And she comes away from that at the very end of the episode, and Peter asks her about the drawing, and she says, "Yeah, that's the man that's going to kill me." But before that, she says that, she doesn't have any fears anymore. Now, we'll see those doubts and fears kind of work their way back in, and that may have something to do with the timeline reset. I don't know. But I just really liked that Belle gave her some advice, and it seemed to work, at least temporarily. But I'm going to talk about Mr. X just a little bit here. We learned in season 4 that Mr. X turned out to be Belle and shot her in the head. We learn in this episode that Mr. X is a bad man from Olivia's past. I tried to find the quote, and just real quickly here while you guys were talking, and because I forgot to pull it up earlier, and I couldn't find it. But either she said or Peter said about her that her life changed for the worse the day that she met Belle and Walter. So in this episode, in the season finale of season 3, we see her getting killed by Walter Nutt, and then in season 4 finale, we see her getting killed by Belle. Could it be that both of these guys kind of are represented by Mr. X? Mr. X is that representation of her childhood, all the bad things that happened, starting with the day that she met Belle and Walter. What do you guys think?
Didn't Walter shoot her in Brave New World Part 2?
No, it was alternate.
Walter shot her. Alternate shot her in season 3, and Walter shot her in season 4, which is why I never understood why anyone came to the conclusion that Belle was Mr. X, because both times we've seen her shot in the head, it's been a version of Walter.
That's right. You guys are right. Yep, you're right. I got that wrong. So, okay, let's throw the same question out there, but let's pull Belle out of the equation. I guess that. Yeah, I just had that totally mixed up then.
I was also confused as to how Mr. X could be William Bell when Walter is the one who is repeatedly killing her throughout the series.
Mm-hmm. Why did I get Bell, though? Did the producers say that it was Bell?
The producers seem to indicate that because the nanites in Brave New World Part 1 had the X.
And they were Bell's nanites, right?
However, Walter is the one who pulls the trigger.
Okay, so that's where I got Bell from. Okay. Okay, so we'll throw the question back out there, I guess. Is Mr. X a representation of Belle and Walter? Now I'm not so sure, but what do you guys think?
I like that theory. I think having a single person in our subconscious kind of being the combination of Belle and Walter, who kind of ruined her life, or at least, made it really bad for a long time. Mm-hmm. I like that.
Yeah. I know the producers said that it was Belle. And that was, I think I was more okay with it than Clint was, and we're seeing some folks in the chat room saying that they were not really satisfied with that either. I think I would be more satisfied if it was a representation of the difficulty that came about starting the day that she met Belle and Walter. But in the end, you do have to go back to what the producers said, I guess. But that is somewhat
I would also agree with the composite character interpretation.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, I just thought I'd throw it out there. I don't think anybody had discussed it before, and it came to me this time. So, all right. Any other thoughts?
That was actually one of my notes.
Oh, really?
Indeed.
Well, if Brandon / Observer thought of it, then it must be true. All right. Any other thoughts on LSD?
I have several connections to other episodes.
Okay.
Going into Olivia's subconscious was reminiscent of the several scenes with the tank in the first half of season 1. Peter recognizes Olivia by looking into her eyes, which was a callback to the episode Marionette, where Olivia was mad at Peter for not doing exactly that.
Right.
And then, of course, there was some advertising as Astrid holds up a Sprint device, which she will do several more times throughout the season.
We got a lot of Ford and Sprint through this batch of episodes, didn't we?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Erin? Kathleen?
No.
All right. Well, very good. Good insight, guys. The glyphs in this episode spelled fears, and the clue, right when they kind of got in, I think it was right when they got into Olivia's subconscious, it was definitely while they were in her subconscious, there was a poster on one of the sides of the buildings that said, "Be vortex aware." And it foreshadows the opening of a vortex that consumes that ranch and the sheep and the ranch hands and all that stuff at the beginning of the next episode, which is 6:02 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The synopsis is Secretary Bishop determines a method to refocus the damaging anomalies in his universe onto this one. Olivia challenges his actions. The Blueverse Fringe team, Nina, Massive Dynamic, and Sam Weiss mobilize to counter the deadly phenomena occurring there. This was written by Josh Singer and David Wilcox and Graham Rowland and directed by Jana Schwark. And I know I get that name wrong every time, and I apologize. Okay. Let's see. Brandon, we are back up to you.
It is interesting to see that towards the end of Season 3, the producers attempt to destroy the world. In Season 4, they attempt to destroy 2 universes. I hereby postulate that by the Season 5 finale, they will attempt to destroy all existence ever.
You never know.
Also relating forward to Season 4, scenes at the end reminded me of when Walter and Walternate were concerned that Peter would stop existing if they turned the machine off. Also relating to the future, Walter postulates that the Observer was preparing him to let Peter go. He assumed that this meant just to let him go into the machine. However, as it turns out, it is a much more drastic letting him go, as in letting him go from existence.
Right.
We also see yet another appearance of the quote, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds," which was just issued back in 1985 when Walter was first crossing between universes. Right. And yet another appearance of a Faraday cage, which seems to be rather popular with the writers.
Yep.
I will let others go in case I encompass all of their thoughts.
All right, Kathleen.
Okay. I have a note here about Naked Walter.
Yes.
I just have to talk about this for a second. Naked Walter in the hallway with the fuzzy slippers. Priceless. And something he said that I didn't catch the first time around when I had seen this episode. He mentions making more mushroom frittatas and then talks about how they're the biggest caps you've ever seen while naked in the hallway. Just saying. We also have Olivia saying, "You're such a nugget," to baby Henry.
Yep.
Which is where we get the baby nugget reference. I noticed, I guess in the Redverse, they use the old-fashioned pram rather than, a regular Blueverse type stroller. I don't know why things are a little more old fashioned over there, even though they have more technology, but it's kind of kitschy. I don't know.
Yeah.
That was cute. This episode, I think this was the one where we really know for sure that Walternet's agenda is purely revenge based.
Mm-hmm.
He just wants to destroy the other world. He doesn't think that they're out to destroy them. He isn't just trying to do the right thing. He just wants them all to be dead.
Right.
So that was just a really scary realization in this episode, I think. Sam Weiss, he says the timeline is wrong, but I still haven't really figured out what the timeline was supposed to be. What Sam Weiss seemed to think was supposed to happen that somehow got messed up. That really never resolved itself for me. So I'm still looking at the answer to that question.
Yeah. I thought it was a weird choice of words, given timeline means something to us after seeing season 4 than it did at this point in time. But
yeah,
I think it goes back to baby Henry Nugget was not supposed to be alive. Therefore, whichever universe Peter chose, whichever Olivia he chose, would be the one that would, that's where the machine would start up. And since Peter was clearly not on the other side, and he clearly had chosen Olivia from the Blueverse, Sam, didn't think there was any other way for the machine to start up. And therefore, when it did start up, because of the child that Peter had with Olivia, which he didn't know about, he didn't know he couldn't figure it out.
So really, it's all Olivia's fault.
Yeah.
Find a way to blame her.
Sure.
Somehow.
I could go for that.
I mean, really, if you're coming over to the alternate universe and pretending to be somebody else and sleeping with that person's boyfriend, you'd think you'd use a little birth control, but... I
know. That's the thing that none of us can figure out. Like, why wasn't she smarter than that, Or she should have probably been on birth control either. Anyway, although you could go in to say, well, she left all that over there. Maybe Olivia didn't, I don't know. But there are other
I'll
methods
give him a
besides
pass.
pills. I just don't know. It doesn't make sense either.
Yeah. Well, and this is the episode where Olivia is finally starting to redeem herself. But it's too little too late. She doesn't get anything accomplished. She just gets captured.
Again, yes.
Oh, and then at the very end, so Peter goes up to the machine. It's all very dramatic. And then it just kicks him out, right? He tries to touch it and it just boom on the floor. So, I mean, that to me, that was like, okay, now it's really happening. This is 2 episodes away from the season finale.
Yep.
That was really well. And something I noticed this time is, maybe it was his stylish, massive, dynamic tracksuit. Maybe the machine didn't like it.
He was supposed to have no shirt, right? Isn't that what the drawing depicted was, with Peter with no shirt?
Yeah, I saw an interview.
Yes.
With him saying that, well, we are in Canada. I couldn't. I'd freeze to death if I tried to do that scene without a shirt
right.
on. So that's all I had.
All right. Good stuff. All right. Erin?
Well, a lot of what I had is basically on par with what Kathleen was just saying. But, as far as Sam Weiss goes, and I know you guys talked about it a little bit in last week's podcast, but just the whole opening scene with him, it was so intriguing. And just now to know, like, where that character ended up going, and it fell so short of the expectations that we had for him. And that was such a bummer, because it just seems like he had all the answers and knew what was going on, and I just couldn't wait to find out what he knew. And then he's just like, well, I don't really know too much. And we're like, okay. But, that whole opening with the bowling ball, the red going against the black, trying to get to the blue. And it's like, kind of foreshadowing that the Redverse had push this whole thing off, that they're the ones that started it. And I thought that was kind of cool. And, obviously one of the great scenes in this episode was when Walter was in the church at the hospital. And I rewatched it a couple times, when I was watching this, because it's so powerful. And I don't know if he would have been able to get to that place if he hadn't had that interaction with Belle, in the episodes before, to really come to terms with that he has changed and that he made mistakes, but he doesn't want the universe to suffer. And you really, really see that come to fruition in this scene. And I thought John Noble played it so well.
Yeah.
It was really cool to watch that. My love for Olivia grew even more in this episode, because she really, you see this character just from the beginning of the season, when she was just I'm on a mission and I'm, team Redverse, and I need to do whatever I need to do to make sure that the secretary's, mission is fulfilled. And now she's like, well, wait a minute, this isn't right, and we should be fighting for a different outcome. And I really like how we saw that come full circle in this episode with her and her character. And then kind of, in a way, you also see Olivia come full circle in this episode, because at the beginning she's, sunrise, my favorite time of day when the world is full of promise. And, she kind of is just taken through this emotional roller coaster with Peter and trying to, figure everything out. And in the end, she just sees that sunrise, and she knows that no matter what, she has to keep going and she has to keep fighting. And, you just see that spirit in both of them in this episode. And I think that that's great. And then just one little tidbit, that kind of Easter egg we got at the end of season 2, when Belle and Walter are in Walternate's lab, and they see on the chalkboard, it says "The Demon Twist Rough." Right. And that was an anagram for "Don't Trust Sam Weiss." And, after watching all these episodes and seeing what happens, I thought that was interesting that appeared in the Redverse as opposed to the Blueverse. So, was that kind of a take on why Walternate doesn't, it seems like he kind of picks and chooses what he's going to take out of that first People book, to accomplish his own agenda. So is he not trusting Sam Weiss's words, in that book, that the machine could save both universes? So I thought that was a little interesting twist on that, but that's what I got.
Okay, good stuff. Yeah, I was reconsidering that exact same phrase, that "Don't Trust Sam Weiss," and that was a lab that Belle and Walternate shared together. So I came to the same conclusion you did, that Walternate had scribbled that on there. If we're led to believe that one of those two did it, I would land with Walternate rather, and he doesn't seem to know what Olivia's role is with the drawing. He found the drawing, but he doesn't know what to do with it. He doesn't know what it's about. So evidently he hasn't embraced Sam Weiss, if there is a Sam Weiss over there, which is interesting, because you think if there is, Sam would hopefully still, his family is in charge of the machine. It seems like that's been their role through the ages, is to know about this stuff and keep his universe best interest in mind. I would think there's a Sam Weiss over there. What is he doing? What is his role? Why isn't he doing that? But maybe there's not. I don't know. We never got to see that. Okay, got a couple of things here. At the beginning of the episode, and Erin, you were just talking about it with Peter and Olivia in bed together, and you get a sense of what Olivia and Peter are like when they're together. They really seem to have a very loving, genuine relationship. It's nice, and they don't get that very often. We don't get to see this part of their relationship very often, and it seems like at the moments when we do get that, then that something happens to take that away. And sure enough, by the end of the episode, Peter's gone into the machine, and then goes right into the season finale. So I'll go back. I'll probably harp on this again and again. And when we do our season 4 recap episode, I'll probably mention it again, but it just makes me wonder what we're going to get. What's the ending of the series going to be like? What is it? Is it going to be just something's always going to be there to take them apart, or are they finally going to get together? Because when they get together, it's pretty cool. I'll point out that Henry, at the beginning of the episode, when we saw him, and he was a little baby nugget, he had a red hat. When Olivia gave kind of Henry over to Lincoln, he he had a blue hat on, so just kind of showing his duality there. And then the other thing was, it was cool to see. For me, it was cool to see Sam's bowling alley again. The Fringe event just wrapped up last weekend in Vancouver, which was a fan-generated event where people from all over the world went to Vancouver, hung out for the weekend, and got to go visit different shooting locations. And I did not get to go, but a girl that I work with did get to go. And so she was sharing with me some of the things that they got to do and see, and showed me some of the pictures. A lot of the pictures are up on the fringeevent.com website. I think you might have to sign in, create a username to see the pictures. I'm not positive on that, but lots of really cool pictures of the Bishop House and Sam's bowling alley and Raiden Lake and just different shooting locations that they've done, different cafes and all kinds of different things. Really, really cool stuff. And so she was telling me about Sam's bowling alley, and they talked to the guy who runs the bowling alley, and he was a super nice guy, and he kind of shared with them some stories of when Fringe was there filming and stuff. So anyway, just having had that experience with her this week when she got back, and then seeing the bowling alley right after that was kind of cool for me. So anyway, go check out the fringeevent.com and all the pictures they have over there. I think you'll enjoy it. All right. Anything else for 6:02 a.m. Eastern Standard Time?
It is worth noting that in an interview, John Noble mentioned that he is the only one of the main actors without a no nude scenes clause in his contract.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Also, Peter mentions that after saving both universes, he wants to permanently retire, which he does by ceasing to exist.
All right. Anything else? All right.
No.
All right. Well, the glyphs spelled agent, and the do I have this right? I think I have. No, I have it right. Yeah. The clue for the next episode, the rancher, the guy in the white pickup truck at the very beginning of the episode, he had a little bumper sticker on his bumper with a lightning bolt. And, of course, lightning comes heavily into play in the next episode, The Last Sam Weiss, which I will from now on affectionately refer to as The Last of Sam Weiss, because this is the last time we ever see his character on screen. The synopsis says, Olivia and Sam Weiss determine a new way to access the Wave Sync device. A disoriented Peter slips out of the hospital and finds his way to Liberty Island. Casualties mount as anomalies take a devastating toll on the populace of the northeastern United States. This was written by Alison Skapker and Monica Owusu-Breen and directed by Tom Yatsko. And Kathleen, you are up.
Okay. So towards the beginning, not the very beginning, but when the family's riding in the car and that song, I think it's a Doors song, Riders on the Storm,
That's
come
right.
on,
Yep.
just gave me goosebumps. I love that song, and it really set a mood, I think, for the rest of the episode. So that was really good. There's that great scene with Walter and Astrid where Walter is flying the kite, and that just, it felt like classic Walter to me. You know, we once again get the mad scientist back, and that was kind of fun to see that side of him. Feels like it's been a while since we've seen that, so that was good. Oh, and he calls her ostrich.
Yeah, he does.
That's great. One of my favorites. So that was great. So Olivia's the crowbar. This whole thing with the crowbar just seemed really strange to me, a little hokey, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the box and you have to get the key, which opens the box that has the crowbar, but actually it's just a picture of Olivia. I don't know. It seemed a little strange to me, the whole thing, and even the hokiness with Sam using something in the museum like a bowling ball to prop the door open. I don't know. It just didn't. it didn't really work for me. But most of the episode I did really like. But a lot of the stuff with Sam, I don't know, didn't quite work. You know what the whole thing with the crowbar and all of that reminded me of is that the cork in the Cave of Light on Lost. You know, that kind of whole strange, where is this coming from? Where did they come up with this stuff? So that was a little, sorry, spoiler alert. But anyway, something that I noticed was when Peter wakes up, he writes the note, "I am going home," which is the same note he writes back in whenever that was, in 1985, 1986, when he goes out to the lake to go back to his own universe.
Yeah. He
writes that same note to his his non-mother, but his other mother. So that was a little spooky. And I didn't quite understand where he was in terms of who he thought he was, whether he thought he was the younger version of himself from the Redverse, right. And, I need to go and see my father on Liberty Island. He's the Secretary of State, although I didn't think or the Secretary of Defense, although I didn't think his father was the Secretary of Defense back then.
Right.
So that or was it yet another consciousness from yet a third universe where he stayed over there the whole time? I don't know. That was confusing to me, and I don't think we've seen resolution to that yet. I don't know if we will or if that's something to come, but I don't think they really explained that, where he really was mentally when he was all confused at the beginning of that episode. So, and I loved the scene with Walter and Olivia when he was giving her a pep talk about to believe in herself, mm-hmm. and that, what a great person she was. And honestly, I thought it was really sweet, and I thought it was one of the most fatherly that Walter's ever been, even though Olivia, is not his daughter. It felt very warm and genuine and fatherly, and that was a really sweet scene.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. So that's what I had.
All right, well, let me ask you guys about her question there regarding, what was up with Peter during that time. You guys have any ideas or theories on that?
I had thought that he had become temporally or universally dislocated, and assumed that he was indeed in the Redverse and had been there all along.
Okay. Erin, any ideas?
Not really. I had honestly written that down as a note myself, and I was just wondering, because I know that never got answered this season. So I have no idea.
Yeah, interesting. I wrote it down too, and my thoughts are largely along the same lines as Kathleen's were. That whole idea that I'm going home, we saw that in the episode Peter. That's what he told his mom, Elizabeth, or his other mother, as Kathleen said, when he was going to go, throw himself into the lake. So
Subject 13.
Yeah, I said Peter, didn't I? Thank you. So I don't know. If I had to pick, I would say that he somehow, his consciousness, he reverted back to when he came over. I mean, he went to the pawn shop that was and got the silver dollar. But my only thing is Kathleen's exactly right. Walter was not the Secretary of Defense yet when Peter came over, but maybe that was maybe it was an oversight by the writers, or maybe it was just, I don't know. I don't have another explanation, but I'm basing kind of all of that on a comment that Walter made, in that he said that it could cause, temporarily memory loss for Peter with this electro surge that he might have. And so maybe that happened. Maybe there was some memory loss, and so maybe it was a loss all the way back to when he came over, or maybe it was a blending of the memories. And if it was a blending of the memories, then that would explain the Secretary of Defense. But I'm still a little bit confused myself.
That would make a little bit of sense though, because like when he went to Liberty Island. He's like, I need to show him something. And he went and he got that coin before he went to Liberty Island. And in the Redverse, he did the coin trick with his mother, not with his father. So, you know, that the memory of him being a child and wanting to show his father.
I like that idea.
Interesting.
That he had finally mastered that trick. I think that could make sense.
Yeah, it could. All right. Well, Erin, it's your turn. What do you got?
Oh, okay. All right. Well, honestly, a lot of my notes kind of paralleled with what Kathleen had said. I made the note about Peter writing, I'm going home. He also says it to Olivia in season 4, in the end of all things, when he's walking away from outside the hospital, he says, I have to go home. So we see that even again in season 4. Right. Before they disarm the machine, Peter takes Olivia's hand and he says, don't say I never took you anywhere. And he says that to her in season 1 in the episode Unleashed, when they're down in the sewers waiting for that monster to come find his babies. He says the same exact thing to her. So I thought that was, you know, coming full circle on that. That was kind of cool. Honestly, my favorite part of this episode were just, you know, like Kathleen said, the interaction between all of our characters, because really this is the last time outside of Peter and Olivia that we get to see our true Blueverse characters interact, and just, you know, knowing that and watching the scenes, and there's just so many touching scenes between the characters that, you know, really solidify the relationships that they've built over the past 3 seasons. And, you know, it was nice to watch that again, knowing that we're never really going to get them back. So I really liked that. Obviously the scene between Walter and Olivia, the scene between Walter and Astrid, you know, when she just knows exactly what she needs to say to him to get him to leave Peter's side and keep working and keep going. And, you know, there's everything like that all of those scenes are just so great.
Yeah.
And then I just thought that this episode was really a testament to how far Peter has come, you know, since joining Fringe, and how much Olivia has really influenced, you know, and changed his life. And she's the reason why he's a better man than his father, and, you know, the decisions that he makes are based on his love for her. So, you know, she taught him to be selfless, and I think that that's why he's able to fulfill his destiny, is because he was fated to be with her.
Yeah. Good. All right. Anything else?
Nope, that's all I got.
All right, Brandon.
In terms of food references, Astrid lures Walter away from Peter with promises of tapioca pudding.
Yeah.
Walter also comes back with a classic fruit cocktail, which he has not seen in a considerable time. Also, at the end of the episode, Olivia serves Sam some type of drink in a cup. Could it possibly be tea?
With some soul magnets! Probably not.
It is a possibility. In one possible future, that did occur. Anyway, originally I was curious as to why Sam Weiss did not appear in Season 4. Perhaps since there was no need for a crowbar since Peter no longer existed. However, I believe a more simpler solution may be there. The title of the episode. If Sam Weiss were to appear again afterwards, they should have called this The Penultimate Sam Weiss, which is not nearly as ominous.
That's a good point.
As an interesting note, Broyles mentions that there is a storm outside Worcester.
Yes. Yeah, I think our Boston fans are not going to appreciate his pronunciation. Trust me on that. They're kind of particular.
We also see cars getting struck by lightning, which is more proof that no mode of transportation is ever safe in this show. The only other thought that I had was that Peter strolling through the empty hospital reminded me a lot of the pilot episode of The Walking Dead, complete with Peter leaving the hospital and noticing that the world is ending.
Ooh.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else?
No.
Okay. I mentioned in my intro here that I would affectionately refer to this as the last of Sam Weiss. Not only that, but the last thing that is said to Sam Weiss is by Broyles, and he says, "I'm afraid this is where you get off. Official personnel only." So how's that for a send-off to the character right there? Thought it was very appropriate. That's all I have other than the Peter consciousness thing, which we already talked about. So any other thoughts from you guys?
I sometimes feel like they had more plans for Sam Weiss, but he never evolved into quite the character that they wanted him, they dreamed of for him, and maybe he wasn't very popular with the fans, so they just gave him the good old boot instead of continuing his storyline. At least they didn't bury him alive,
like Nikki and Paolo.
Yeah, Nikki and Paolo, yeah, exactly.
Now they did continue his character in the comic books, so if you guys and those listening haven't read the comic books and you want to know more about the Sam Weiss character, there is more there. And he does help Peter with the machine as Peter goes back through time. So there's a little bit more there with the character, but I wish they would have developed him more on screen. Yeah. All right, well, let's get into the final episode here. The glyphs in The Last of Sam Weiss spelled multi. And the clue when Sam Weiss and Olivia are there trying to get the key from the museum, the squad car there is 2026, which is our clue that in episode 322, The Day We Died, they're going to be jumping into the year 2026. And the synopsis is, after only a minute in the ancient device, Peter gains a week-long view of this universe in 2026 with intimate knowledge of the fate of the alternate universe. He temporarily returns to the present and then learns his ultimate mission. He has to save both universes. This was written by Jeff Pinkner, J.H. Wyman, and Akiva Goldsman, and directed by Joe Chappelle. Erin, you are up first.
Okay. Well, I think one of my favorite aspects of this episode was, even though it was brief, was seeing Olivia actually be able to control her abilities.
Yeah.
Just that scene with Walter, it was so cool. And it just makes me sad that they might not carry that into season 5, because I feel like it would be to her advantage to be able to have her abilities and be able to control them. Like we saw in Letters of Transit, Etta, has some Cortex fan abilities. The observers are not able to read her like they can read other people. So it only makes sense that if Olivia had these abilities, that they would allow her to have them. And I know that the executive producers have said that we might not get to see that. So I hope that it ends up happening, but we'll see. I thought the scene between Peter and Walter was great. It was a great payoff for the two of them when Peter says, "No matter what, you're my father." Just the ups and downs in the relationship throughout the series. I just think that they really deserve that. And especially Walter being in that place where he is, just knowing, that Peter does consider him to be his father, I thought was great for that character. And then the going from that to the interaction between Peter and Walter, it was night and day. And I thought that was really interesting. But the line that I picked up from their interaction was when Walter says, "Do you know what it's like to wake up and just for a moment think that everything is as it was, then realize that it's not, that the nightmare you had was real." And I feel like that is just a statement, to season 4. And,
yes.
And Peter, it was just, when I heard him say that, when I was watching the episode, I'm like, oh man, Peter quickly realizes that what he has is not what he had. And just the dreams, sequences that we get throughout the beginning of the series it's awful for him to keep being jarred awake and just to realize that he doesn't know that he is where he belongs. He thinks he isn't where he belongs. So I really like that tie-in. And then the scene between Walter and Etta was great in the lab, getting to throw back to Jean and just, having that was awesome. Yeah. Even in the future, a little reference to Jean. The one thing I wish we had gotten in this episode, which we didn't, was a scene between Walter and Astrid. Like, I feel like that relationship, and I know that, we only have 42 minutes in the episode, but just to be able to see them interact after all those years, I thought would have been really great. So it was kind of a shame we didn't get that. And then just the whole eulogy scene with Olivia, her death, and that was just gut-wrenching. And that score from Chris Tilton that comes back in season 4, you know, when Olivia's having that conversation with Nina about how she's chosen just to let the memories take hold, and, you know, that she's willing to lose the life she had before, and just, you know, in a way we're seeing her die all over again. And just, you know, there's so many great scores in this show, but that one, I don't know why, it just, every time I hear it, it just, you know, you kind of pause for a second, you're like, oh man. So that was really good.
Yeah.
That's about all I had on that one.
All right. Brandon?
There was a lot of food references in this episode. Apparently, the previous Sunday, Peter made Olivia 2 eggs over easy, bacon, and grapefruit juice. Peter also brings Walter Twizzlers, serves Olivia red wine and something else, and by the end of the episode, removes some alcohol from his refrigerator, and we can see that he also has steak in a can in the same drawer. I was rather intrigued by the opening credits with its many new phrases, including one in particular, brain porting, which seemed to harken back to soul magnets and the events surrounding William Bell taking control of Olivia's body, essentially porting his brain over. Perhaps in the future, this technology will become more readily available.
Yeah.
I was this episode, along with Letters in Transit, reminded me a lot of an episode of the TV series Dollhouse, the season 1 finale, Epitaph 1, where the show jumps forward 10 years in the future, and we see how everything has fallen apart. In the commentary for that episode, the writers talked a lot about how everyone had what they called future hair. In this episode, we see Astrid has a considerable amount of future hair, and is in fact the most radically different from her current character. I was rather interested to see what events in this episode could possibly happen in the season 5 or the future, assuming that the large bulk of this episode will not take place because the Redverse has not been destroyed.
Right.
So, for example, Olivia will probably not be the leader of Fringe Division unless she was somehow hiding, but still maintaining a position of responsibility during Letters of Transit. Also, it's said in this episode that she gained greater control over her Cortex abilities a couple years ago, which is interesting considering by the end of Season 4, we are left uncertain as to whether she still has access to these abilities, with most of the Cortexiphan gone from her system.
Right.
Broyles is a senator, which may happen at some point in the near future, as he was looking towards Nina to help drive Fringe Division by the end of Season 4, leaving the possibility open for him to continue to go on to other career opportunities. Olivia has gotten married to Peter, which assumedly would happen. Otherwise, there may be potentially awkward moments considering that she is pregnant. The terrorist Moreau is in charge of the group The End of Dayers, which I am curious as to is this the same Moreau that appeared in the Season 1 episode, The Transformation?
There was a Moreau in that episode?
Yes.
Huh.
They were meeting with Conrad Moreau, who was the person who was developing the biochemical weapon.
Okay. Boy, I don't know the answer to that. That's a great catch.
I don't believe we were ever given a first name of Moreau in this episode, so it may be the first, or it may be the same person, or it may not be. And also, as an interesting note, when Walter is in prison, he looked a lot like he did when he was first rescued from St. Clair's.
Right.
Perhaps his version of future hair, which is reminiscent of his past hair. All of this has happened before, and all of it will happen again.
Is that it?
Yes.
Do you have any future hair issues?
No.
What about past hair issues?
How far in the past?
Did you ever have hair?
I had 3 of them. But they have been lost over time.
Well, that's a sad story. All right, Kathleen.
It is okay. I am content.
That's
The
good.
hat is comfortable.
All right, Kathleen.
Okay. So I think this episode would have been a good series finale and I know they kind of wrote it that way, because they weren't sure if they were going to get renewed or not.
Right.
For the 4th season, although I wonder if they would have changed the final scene, where Peter disappears and the observers are outside, to make it more of a happy ending. Like, okay, we've created the bridge. Let's try to work together. Done.
Yeah.
Right there with Peter still being in existence. I wonder if that's where they would have taken it if it hadn't gotten renewed. But I guess I don't know if anyone's asked the producers that question, but that'd be interesting to find out.
Yeah, it would. I don't know. I don't know if they ever not.
Yeah, I was wondering, how easy it is to get reelected. Broyles getting reelected with that creepy eye of his. I mean, maybe he just always takes pictures at a profile or something. That really bothered me for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else did I have? So the whole explanation, the quick explanation that Walter gave for who the first people are.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's us. It's us. We did it. Something tells me that wasn't the original plan of the writers.
Okay.
Part of where I got that is one of the extras in the season 3 DVDs shows an interview with Jeff and Joel, and they talk about the first people, about being this whole race of advanced civilization predating what we currently know as the first men, and they were talking rather animatedly about it, like that had been their plan, and yet we just could get this kind of quick wrap up at the end of this episode from Walter about, oh no, the first people, that's us, we go back in time, and oh, well, why can't you just not send the machine back? Oh, well, you can't do that. I didn't really buy the whole explanation from Walter. Mm-hmm. Well, I can't make a different choice, but you can make a different choice. Yeah, that didn't make a lot of sense to me, but it made me think that maybe they were going somewhere else there, and then they felt they kind of had to wrap that storyline up, so they came up with something else. But I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had a lot of the same points. Astrid's hair was different.
Yeah.
Really, it was really different. Although her hair had changed, but apparently she hadn't changed that much, because she was still way too nice, and people were leaving stuff on her desk. Yeah. I thought that was kind of a strange thing to put in, but funny. So, Oh, and Walter getting excited about a wormhole in Central Park with might be able to see some sauropods. That was kind of fun Walter moment. Well, that's pretty much all I had.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you on the first people. Seems like they were planning to go in one direction and then decided to end that storyline. Sam Weiss is gone. He's kind of the first people, like his name's on the book. So they get rid of Sam Weiss, they get rid of the first people. Mm-hmm. And I thought their explanation worked, but I don't think it was their original. And I don't know. That's just, I've never heard him really say that, but that's kind of my thought as well. I watched that same video that you were talking about, and they kind of mentioned that, there's some evidence on Earth that there was once a great civilization that has died out, and they gave, the Egyptian pyramids as an example, of people accomplishing things that they should not have been able to accomplish. And so that kind of led you to believe that's where they were going with it. And there was this great race of people that were able to accomplish great things that they really shouldn't have been able to accomplish. And the end of those great accomplishments was the extinction of themselves. But they didn't go that way. So I think I'm with you. I think that they decided to just kill that and go in this other direction to wrap it up. But I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. I love this episode as a season finale. It's one of my favorites. I know we only have 4 of them, but I love this one. Again, the Orpheum Theater we see in this episode, and we see that a lot. My friend also talked about that. They went inside the Orpheum Theater. She showed me some wonderful pictures of it. The door there that Moreau puts his ear up to and is listening to the aria coming out of the main auditorium. She has a picture of that door, and so go check out the stuff at thefringeevent.com. I think you'll enjoy it. And one thing I just want to just give kudos to John Noble, as if he doesn't deserve kudos in every single episode, but the work that he did in this episode, where you could tell that Walter had a stroke, the way he controlled his arm and his mouth, his facial movements. That I just can't. That would be so hard to do, to be able to have that much muscle control over your face, especially. He did a great job. We loved his work in this episode. All right. Any other thoughts on The Day We Died?
Would you hate? Oh, sorry.
You may go first.
Thank you, Brandon Observer. Would you hate me if I played devil's advocate on the whole first people machine conversation?
Of course not.
Because I just think that with the way that the machine was designed, that it's specifically calibrated to work for Peter, and that it's designed to bring him into the future to observe a possible future in order for him to make a different decision when he comes back. I just think that is clear evidence that it was Walter, and that was the storyline that they were originally going with, because we see this way back at the end of season 2 when he responds to the machine. And I feel like I understand with the commentary on the DVD that is a little confusing, but I don't think that they had originally planned for one thing and then went another way, because we see the evidence throughout the season. So that's just kind of my thought on it.
Okay, good point. Brandon?
At first, I was rather confused as to how the machine also appeared in the other universe, because there was no one around in that universe to send it back into time. However, I believe this can be cleared up with assuming that the departure point between the red and blue verses occurs after the Paleozoic era, once the machine pieces are already established. I also thought it was rather fortunate that the Redverse had their equipment set up on the opposite side of the room from the Blueverse. Otherwise, the fusing of the two universes in that room could have ended very badly.
Yes.
I also think it was worth noting that in the final scene, there are 10 observers. We know that August is dead, but someone else is missing, assuming that there are originally 12, one for each of the months. I am not entirely sure what this means.
I think it means you weren't there on picture day.
Or perhaps the missing observer was behind the camera.
Perhaps. Or perhaps it was the boy, an inner child.
I do not personally believe that that is an observer. But that is just my opinion.
Okay. I disagree.
Royals is proof that not all bald people are observers.
Is it? Is he proof? Maybe he is an observer.
I have not seen him at the weekly meetings.
All right. Anything else on The Day We Died? Okay. No. All right. Well, that's going to wrap up our conversations on season 3. What a great season of episodes. Can't wait to start season 4 next week. So next week we're going to be watching Neither Here Nor There, One Night in October, Alone in the World, Subject 9, and Novation, the first 5 episodes of season 4. And it's going to be awesome. I cannot wait. And it's just, like I said, it's going by so quickly. Now, season 4 is not out on DVD or Blu-ray quite yet. So how are we going to be watching these? Well, they are available. You can get them in iTunes or on Amazon, and you can get them by the episode. And so that is the best, most legal way to get those episodes. And we mentioned a few weeks ago that if you have Amazon Prime, you can watch season 1 through 3 on Amazon for free. And the iPad app or the iOS app for Amazon has now been updated so that you can also see them on there as well. So if you want to get them for free and you're on an iOS device and you're an Amazon Prime member, well, there you go. So, but otherwise, I'm pulling up the date here. I don't have it memorized. When season 4 comes out on Blu-ray, it comes out on September the 4th. So we're not very far away, just a couple of weeks away. But anyway, so that's how we're going to be watching those episodes. If you may have them on your DVR as well. A lot of folks have them on their DVR, but it will come out on September the 4th on DVD and Blu-ray. So if you're going to be getting that, if you're going to be pre-buying that, or getting it on launch day or whenever, do us a favor, head over to thefringepodcast.com. On the sidebar right there, you'll see a picture of all the DVD and Blu-ray sets. If you'll click on that, that will take you over to Amazon. And then anything you purchase, whether it be diapers or Fringe DVDs, or maybe a fedora. Maybe Brandon needs a new fedora for that unusually bald head that he has. You can get all that at Amazon, and we'll get credit for it if you click on our little banner, and we would sure appreciate that. We also had somebody click on our HostGator banner this last week, and we earned a commission from HostGator for that, so we're very, very much appreciative of that. And we sincerely like HostGator. We're not just throwing that product out there because we get a commission. We use it. We like it. So HostGator is what I believe is the best hosting company there is. All right, a couple of other little quick things here. We had some folks asking in the chat room about John Noble. And I got a tweet earlier in the week about are they filming yet? And the answer to both of those is positive news. They are filming. They have resumed filming season 5 of Fringe, and John Noble is back on set, and he's doing much better. So that's all good news all the way around there. I mentioned last week that we are starting a new podcast called the Revolution Podcast, and that's based on the new NBC show starting on September 17th at 10/9 Central called Revolution. So hopefully you'll be joining us. We'll be doing the live chat on Mondays as that show is airing. I don't know about the West Coast chat, though. That's going to put it at 1 o'clock, wrapping up my time, 1 a.m. So no promises there. We'll see how it goes. But I definitely will be doing the East and Central chat with that. So that starts, as I mentioned, September 17th at 10/9 Central. So join us over at goldenspiralmedia.com. You click on the live show link, and that'll take you over to our chat room. And that's where we do all of these podcasts live, like we're doing right now. We've got some people watching us do the show live right now. And we'll also be doing the Revolution podcast in front of a live audience as well. And that will be taking place on Tuesday evenings. And I think our show time on that is 7 p.m., which would be 8 p.m. Eastern time. So join us every Tuesday once Revolution is airing on NBC. However, tomorrow afternoon, which would be Sunday, August 19th, we are doing our very first episode, kind of our preview of the show, what we hope to get out of the show. I'll be introducing the new host, which is Jeremy Hunt. I mentioned that last week as well. So I don't know if we're going to do it in front of the live audience or not. We'll see how he's doing. He's going to be nervous. Obviously, it's his first time podcasting. So follow us on Twitter. I might give an announcement when we start that show if you're interested in coming over and checking that out. Okay, I think that is all. The Twitter name I've been mentioning for several weeks now that we have changed that. That is now Fringe. I'm sorry. See, I was going to say Fringe Observers. No, we've changed it to GSM Podcasts. So if you're already following us at Fringe Observers, we just switched it. You don't have to do anything else. But just recognize now that our tweets are coming from GSM Podcasts. And then if you're doing a Follow Friday or trying to get our attention over on Twitter, you need to address that to GSM Podcasts. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Golden Spiral Media. Check out all of our cool stuff over at goldenspiralmedia.com or thefringepodcast.com. You can send us in feedback at 304-837-2278 or feedback at thefringepodcast.com. Okay, I think that is everything. To Kathleen and Erin and Brandon, the Observer, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. Brandon, you've been quite entertaining.
I believe you humans call this amusing.
Yes, we do. All right. So as far as sign-offs tonight, we're going to go myself, and then Brandon, then Kathleen, and then Erin. So until next time, stay Fringe-tastic.
I have looked at all possible futures, and in every one, the result is the same. You have to tune in next week.
And just remember, it's always better to channel your inner mad scientist than your inner observer.
And remember, momentum can be deferred, but it must always be paid back in full.
The Fringe Podcast and Golden Spiral Media are not associated with Bad Robot Productions, Warner Brothers, or Fox. Golden Spiral Media's use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, and for educational purposes as provided within United States Code Title 17, aka Fair Use. Copyright 2012, Golden Spiral Media.